Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Reds Rundown Podcast, hosted by two lifelong Reds fans and journalists. I'm Rob. He's Joe. We appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening. Joe, we are doing a Sunday night show. It'll still get released on Monday, but news came out this weekend, Joe. News that I think you and I were both hoping for. We'll talk about that in a second. But how's life? How you doing?
Been going pretty well. This cold weather keeps on coming, so I'm excited for baseball season more and more, which is going to be nice. But the good news we got that we're going to discuss later helps with being excited for baseball season, and yeah, it's a good time to be a Reds fan. Yeah,
it is very much a good time to be a Reds fan. Here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to go through the question of the day. The Reds made a big signing. The Reds have gone out and signed Eugenio Suarez. Gino is back. Gym Day is going to be very excited, I'm sure, for Gym Day. Again, I'm going to ask you guys, what grade do you give the Eugenio Suarez signing for the Reds? We'll talk about that later on in the show, but I at least wanted to get that out there. I mean, I'm very excited to talk about this with Joe here. We're also going to talk about the top prospects for the Reds. Hunter Green is rated very high for something. MLB Now has been doing their top 10 players heading into the season. So far, the Reds have 3 players on it, which I think people would be surprised. We'll talk a little bit about Joey Votto. We'll talk a little bit about the FanDuel Sports Network, some other Reds signings, and the big one. So, sorry, I had to cough real quick. But, Joe, I'm really excited about it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll do our best to get through the rest of this podcast before we get through and get to talk about Gino. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah. I just got so excited. My throat decided I've been sick on and off for the last couple of days, so hang with me. But let's just start with the top prospects. Most of the top prospects lists are coming out right now, Joe. Sal Stewart has been in the top 20 for most of these top prospect lists. We've also seen Tyson Lewis, Alfredo Duno, Steele Hall, and Rhett Lauder listed in the top 100 or top 50 for many of these as well. We'll talk about the overall ranking, but how do you feel about the Reds prospects, the ones that are being talked about right now specifically for a lot of these top prospect lists as we head into the 2026 season?
Yeah, I feel pretty good. We have Sal Stewart, who's obviously ready to play, going to play a lot for us this year. Rhett Lauder, who has played for us and probably going to have some sort of role here for us. I think there's still, we're going to talk about like where some other guys have them ranked as a system. I think we're still in a spot where we have a couple guys who are ready to contribute now, but then there's kind of a gap to guys who are still very young and like have tons of potential, but just like aren't ready to produce for us in the next maybe year or so. So guys like Tyson Lewis and Steele Hall and Duno, and then I don't know if you saw, they even made comments about how they don't like bringing catchers up more than one level per year. So Duno is probably going to be stuck for a couple of years in the minors. So
at least 2 more.
Yeah, I like our guys. I like the prospects we have. I think it's a solid group. But I do think that if you're going to poke a weakness in it, I think we have got a couple guys who are ready to compete right now, and then a huge gap in terms of like, you know, in between range, and then they have the guys who are just not going to take a while, which is, you know, you can nitpick that all you want, but I think having guys who are able to contribute now and then maybe next year other guys might start to get ready to come up. Not a bad thing.
No doubt about that. And I'll say, I mean, obviously Sal is ready. He'll be there. Rhett is, if he's not on the opening day roster, he is probably the very first, player, I would assume, overall, that would make it up to the squad once a pitcher gets hurt regardless. There are, Steele Lewis and Tyson Lewis, or Steele Hall, and Tyson Lewis are 2 interesting players. I feel like they're very different. I feel like, I was watching a little tape on Tyson Lewis actually the other day, funny enough. He's got a really sweet swing, but it worries me on whether or not it'll translate. Steele Hall has a long way to go before he's ready to come up here from the sounds of it. But the guy, Joe, who has been consistently getting better is still only 20 years old. And I really actually think he may have a bat, specifically, that is ready for at least double or triple A is Alfredo Duno. That guy looks like he could be... I know it's everybody talking about just because of, like, his size and the way that, like, he looks. But, like, he really... like has the same skill set as Salvador Perez, like one of the all-time great catchers and at least one of the best catchers of this generation. It's like Yachty and then him for me. So if he continues to kind of do what he's doing, I wouldn't be surprised if he's the top catching prospect in all of baseball here soon enough, as other guys graduate and as he continues to kind of figure it out. Because I mean, if he can be as good defensively as they're talking about and have the bat that he has, I mean, the Reds fans should be like, this is the guy, honestly, of the guys who are not there. I will say Cam Collier, by the way, was still getting some love. He's just been coming off an injury season, but I think anybody who has him outside of their top 100 is crazy, because I still think he is uber talented personally. But I will say I think Duno's the one I'm the most excited about after Sal Stewart in terms of hitters. I think he has every possibility to be where we have a stopgap year between Stevenson, if he ends up leaving, and Duno being that next guy. Yeah, he's crazy good, in my opinion. I've watched so much tape of him, and he's just good at baseball, man. I don't know how else to put it. He's just very good at baseball.
Yeah, honestly, I kind of hate the rule where they're trying to keep him at one level per year.
I
do think there's a chance that he could be ready by next season, in 2027, which could be the year that, like you said, we do need him. Some of the things this organization does, I just will never agree with that shutting guys down after the college season or whatever. That's just something I think he could end up being the best prospect we've had in a long, long time. I think he could end up being better than Sal Stewart. I think he could end up being better than... I don't know who's the last Jay Bruce. I don't know whoever else. He could end up being that type of player. All the other players who've been around him have raved about him. Whether that's pro guys, minor league guys, seems to have pretty much everything you want in a catcher. So I'm really excited for him, and I'm kind of like I'm trying to temper my expectations for the future and just see how this season goes in Double A. And again, just hoping that they bring him up to Triple A at some point this year if he does kill it again, because I do think there's a chance that he could be opening day roster 2027.
I completely agree with you, and I would put him as one of the very few untouchable actual prospects that are still on the Reds top lists. You just don't find catchers that can hit like this kid very often. So he's so strong, man. He is so strong, and he's sneaky athletic. We could sit here and rant and rave about him for a while, but I will say, you alluded to it earlier, Keith Law ranked the Reds system 17, but with the caveat that a lot of we have just graduated a pretty big class, right, with McLean and Ellie, and now Sal's on his way up, Chase Burns. I don't think he's counting Rhett Lauder in his either. So, if you consider all of the graduates that we've had, this is an extremely good ranking, because we're going to just get back up there. He seemed to make it even sound like, we're a draft or two away from being a top 10 system again, which would be absolutely fantastic, because by then you'll know if some of these guys have worked out, or you'll be able to find people like Duno to come up, be that replacement, or you'll be able to trade them for players that you need. Like, just continuing to have a good stock, down there on the farm is just so huge. But, I mean, I almost still think it's an underrate. I mean, the Reds consistently have had 4 or 5 players in the top 100, which is pretty rare when you have, as many prospects coming up. Like, I know that we were upset, or at least I was upset, and I think you and I talked about it too, when they had gotten rid of like Kyle Bodie and, kind of the analytics and everything, but they've still done a really good job of churning out these prospects year after year. I remember hearing about Duno like 2 years ago initially, and he is really blossoming, and then Tyson Lewis, again, has the tools. Steele Hall has the tools. They're, getting very good older pitchers, and they're getting them through their system very quickly. Like, the Reds have really done a good job of setting things up, and I have no issue with them being at 17, considering all of the prospects that we've had come up. And I very much believe that there are going to be some more young guys who will make their way through the system and continue to push that up the rankings.
Yeah, I mean they have 4 top 100 prospects, I should say, based on MLB.com's list. Some of that's obviously hurt by the injuries. Rhett Lauder, we talked about, I think it was last week. He comes in at like 86.
Yeah,
not exactly fair for what he has done, I don't think. And I think it's just sometimes people who are trying to prognosticate what people will be or get so attached to like this guy's the fastest fastball or the nastiest curveball. But Rhett Lauder's placement was awesome, and I think that's just underrated. So that's a little side note there.
Agree.
I think 17th is kind of fair, but they're also dinging us for, Rhett Lauder, whatever that might be, whether he's not counted or whether he's injured. Cam Collier is coming off an injury, not seeing him on too many high lists right now, and I do think he has a chance to still be very good.
Mm-hmm.
And Rob, I think the only other point I have is that, some of these younger guys that are coming up do make some of the older guys a little bit more, older prospects, I should say, make them a little bit more tradable. So,
Yep.
We're going to talk about what the Reds did to get Gino here in a second. I would say that they shouldn't be afraid before the season or at the deadline to give up guys like Edwin Arroyo or, what have you going forward. So, there's definitely guys who you cannot touch. Alfredo Duno is probably the only one I have right now, but him and Sal Stewart, obviously, because Stewart's going to be on the team. But there should be some talks with some of the other guys behind them, and maybe it's some guys even like Tyson Lewis or Steele Hall if you're going to go after a big fish. But yeah, that's just how I see it. I think you're going to find maybe we're going to trade guys like Edwin Arroyo, maybe Cam Collier if he struggles to bounce back from the injury. We'll see. But that's kind of how I see things moving forward. It's a really good spot to be in because you have the guys you want to keep. You have guys who are still very valuable to other franchises, even if they're not the most valuable to us. So it's being ranked 17th is not the worst thing in the world when it's like, yeah, they're being dinged by injuries and stuff. We're just going to see how people play this year and kind of get that value back up.
Yeah, I really do believe that they could be a top 10 system depending on what you count and how you see some of these people. I mean, I think from 1 to 10 for the most part. I mean, even there are some guys who are down in like the teens that a lot of people I think really like. It's just they're a little younger or, they're still working on certain tools. So I'm very happy about that. That was really cool. I was actually one of the things I was really looking forward to talking about today until the news. So we'll keep chugging here. Hunter Green listed in the top 5 for the NL Cy Young, specifically at 4th at plus 100 or plus 1,000, by BetMGM. Joe, it feels like a Cy Young is coming. I mean, as long as either Paul Skeens kind of has maybe a down year, or maybe everybody just kind of gets voter fatigue for Paul Skeens, or God forbid an injury. And I really mean that. Like, he's so much fun to watch that I would never wish injury anyways, but he really is just that good. But Hunter Green, it feels like we're one really good healthy season away from seeing him in that top 3 spot. So, I mean, how do you feel about this? I feel like this is going to be kind of his expectation moving forward. And it shows you, Reds fans, why the deal that the Reds did with him is so incredibly good for the Reds.
Yeah, sign our young guys. That's what we've been saying for how many years now.
Yep.
It's good. I think we talked about the end of last year. He finished as a top 5 to 10 pitcher in baseball when healthy. I think he played phenomenal. And this is something that I would say I believe he deserves to be exactly where he is, 4th in the odds. I would not bet it because I do think it's an uphill battle as a Cincinnati person for our luck to stay healthy, number 1. Number 2, put up the numbers that is going to get you above guys like Paul Skeens who get more headlines, or to be honest, a lot of the Dodgers pitchers.
Yep.
You're counting on not just Hunter Green having a comparable season to them, which he is fully capable of doing, but him getting some of the limelight, some of those guys getting injured, having down years, what have you. So he deserves to be there. Will he ever get the recognition he fully deserves? Probably not. We're going to need to win in the postseason and start bringing some of that primetime baseball to Cincinnati.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And he's got to be able to perform, right? I know that there's a lot of big rumors that he was tipping his pitches in that first game. Or in that second game, I should say. That wouldn't surprise me, but it's just good to see that he's consistently there. He's so freaking good, and I think he's just highly underrated. Even here, I mean, I think they had It was Skeens, Yamamoto, and then I cannot remember who else was in front of him. But those were two of them that I can remember off the top of my head. It might have been Wheeler, something like that, which wouldn't surprise me at all. So just really good to see him getting some recognition, because also top MLB is doing their top 10 players at every position as we get ready for the season, and Hunter Green came in at 10th in starting pitchers. I actually think that might have been a tiny bit low for him based on some of the pitchers that were ahead of him, but because of injury and everything, I think it's just amazing that he's even able to be there in the top 10. How did you feel about his placement?
I thought it might be a little bit low, but I'm overall fine. I thought these lists were better than some of the lists I've seen this offseason by other outlets, and also there's some fan ones that are just really bad. I mean, I'll tell you what. We saw there was plenty of guys in those lists that, like, we could have had 2 or 3 pitchers ahead of them, which is shocking to say the least. But that's how it goes. We talked about last week, and then during the All-Star break, there were certain guys like Mackenzie Gore who made the All-Star team, and we had guys who deserved it maybe a little bit more. So I think 10 is fine coming off the injury. It's not too low. I would have had him higher. But I think going into the season, having a top 10 starting pitcher plus 2 other guys when healthy who are really good, Chase Burns, who's coming on, Rhett Lauder, who could be coming on, and then the innings eater, Brady Singer, could be really good. So, yeah, think he deserves 10, maybe even a little bit higher, but it's not the worst thing in the world to have him at 10.
I mean, when your ace is considered to be 10 and you have the Dodgers that have like 4 aces on their team, you'll take it, honestly. I mean, I really do. I think our pitching staff is going to be crazy. Like, I don't think Andrew Abbott was too far off of the top 10 either. He made it into their top 100 players, so not a huge surprise there. When healthy, Lodolo is amazing, like you said, and then the 2 young guys. It gets me excited for this starting pitching, man. As a pitching, I don't know, fanatic myself, I love to watch well-pitched games. It's just such a treat. Reds fans should really understand how special this staff is this season. Between them and the relief pitchers, we'll talk about that in a second. Just really, really good stuff. Ellie De La Cruz came in at 9. And there were some people who were like, that is way too low. There are some people who were like, he shouldn't even be on the list. I am just happy that he's there. I do think that he is underrated by some, overrated by some as well. I think 9 is fine, personally. I have no issue with it. I think he has every opportunity to be a top 5 guy, though. We'll see if he does it this year. Can he finally put it all together, I think, is the big question everybody's asking. But it was good to see him up there in the top 10, and I have a feeling he will climb up many, many lists here. Again, especially with the signing that the Reds had today. That's just how big it was.
Yeah, it's going to be big. I think this is fair. Part of it has to be defense, which we know he has some range, but he also has some errors he needs to clean up. This signing might also help his defense because of what we talked about last week with some of the scoop issues. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But he also, I think people are maybe worried about him possibly moving positions. Is he a shortstop because of those errors? I think this is the year he can kind of prove it. Remember, back half of last year, he was playing with that injury. He could end up being a lot better if he's healthy this season. So I think it's one of those things where 9 is fair for right now. He has potential, but there are a lot of good shortstops in the league right now. So I don't want to say he's better than some of these guys. He definitely has potential to be top 3 or 4 shortstop in the league, and that probably puts you at the top 15 to 20 players in the league, position players in the league. So, I think that's fair, and I'm excited to see what he can do with some of the improvements that the Reds have made around him.
I am too. I am very much too. Another one that was a surprise. And by the way, I said at the top of the show, Joe, that there were 3 players on these lists so far. The Reds now have 4. So we'll talk about that very briefly, because, again, I want to dedicate a whole section to the Suarez signing. But TJ Friedl makes it in at 9 for center fielders. Now, look, I agree with a lot of people saying center field is a little weak right now. But the man got MVP votes just a couple years ago. And he's been one of the most consistent guys in center field, I think, in Major League Baseball. He plays well when he's healthy. He gets on base. He's always a tough at bat. He's one of the biggest threats in baseball to bunt. He might be one of the best bunters in baseball overall, which is just a lost art in and of itself. He plays a solid center field. You don't have like a ton of worries about him being there. He's good at controlling the game. He is about as solid of a player as you could ask for. I personally was very happy to see him on here. He was the only other player when I was looking through the Reds list that I was like, he might deserve to be on there, at least in terms of pitching or of hitters. Excuse me. I thought if anybody else is going to make it, it should be him. And he did. And so I was really glad to see, too. They didn't even put him at 10, Joe. He was at 9, which was very cool. I just love – I think like Brian Kenny, right? He loves TJ Friedl. I've seen him rank him so many times for different things. So I'm just glad to see that my boy TJ Friedl is getting some love.
Yeah, I think it's, if you take everything into account last year, part of the slump, part of the, injuries he's had, worth it. And then you also talk about what we talked about with Ellie last week with the, that 2-hole was a problem for the Reds for a lot of the season. So in the same way, not the exact same way, but similar to how Ellie was not protected and the 3-hole with someone behind him, like it was almost like, hey, you can kind of pitch around TJ Friedl, not have to throw him a good pitch because, Matt McClain at the start of the year is batting, 180 or whatever it was below that. So that's hopefully going to be fixed this year, the 2-hole, and this at least going to be fixed behind him. So it's going to be, I think, a better year for him too. I think center field is a down position right now. There aren't the same number of elite athletes playing center field as there was, when we were growing up, Rob, or like, I don't know. I just think about how many great center fielders we loved watching, and it's like they have guys who are moving positions from right field to center field, or like Neil Cruz moving to the outfield, stuff like that, where it's like they're not really center fielders, but they're kind of making it work. It's not the same position, but it's still good to see him get recognition, and I do think that this year he could have a little bit of a breakout season because he's so consistent. If they have the protection behind him and he stays healthy, I think there could be just, even if it's a slight uptick to batting 280 again, I think that's very possible this year.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either because gosh, man, the Reds just needed one more piece and it feels like they've got it. So it can do wonders. Like all you guys need to understand it's a domino effect. And a player like TJ Friedl, like you said, batting in that 1-hole with 4 guys probably, I would say even maybe 5 deep behind him that can really hit some baseballs is – and the one really punch that they needed. Oh, let's talk real quick, very, very briefly. Eugenio Suarez, now also a Red again, is a top 10 MLB Now player at third base, where I think there are a lot of good third basemen in baseball right now. And it's really good to see him in there. I'm a little bit surprised. Now I'm gonna check this again, but I'm a little surprised that that Ke'Bryan Hayes was not on here, mostly just because he is the reigning Gold Glove winner. I understand that there are some really good players who are ahead of him here. It just shows that if he gets his bat a little bit better, he could be really very high on that list. So just a little bit of love there for Joe, before we continue to shower him with his flowers later on.
Yeah, I think just to your point about these lists, I do think that they favor some more of the offensive stuff. And it's just baseball people in general, and it's really sad. Like guys like, I think Brandon Phillips is like a first ballot Hall of Famer, and people will call me crazy for it. That dude was the best defensive second baseman I've ever seen, and like he's not going to make the Hall of Fame. He's going to make the Reds Hall of Fame. We talked about that, but it's sad that it got to a point where someone could be so good at defense but it doesn't even matter. Like in the same way the Reds fans do this too. Like Ke'Bryan Hayes, I think there were some key moments offensively he helped us last year too, and I think people don't really give him the credit that is worth it because there was a lot of plays at third base I thought he made that were just really, really good, and I think he should at least be in consideration for the top 10, if not at least in the top 10. So, but just one of those things where people just don't value defense anymore, and in a roster construction way, I don't always value defense, and we can talk about that when we get to Gino. But like, once they're on the field, I do value the defense, and that's kind of like a different way to put it. And I think that they should value that a little bit more.
I literally could not agree more. I think it's a shame that Ke'Bryan Hayes didn't make it, but good good on Suarez, and he's gotten better at defense too. So, yeah, he's a much different type of player than he was when he was here last, in my opinion. We are still waiting on first baseman and relief pitching. I will say that I think Spencer Steer has a possibility of sneaking on to the list at first base, Joe. I wouldn't be entirely surprised if they're counting him as a first baseman. He was obviously in contention for a Gold Glove again this year. He still hit over 20 home runs while being injured last year. He still is an RBI machine when he's out there. He's as consistent, again, as they come. I know his batting average was down, but I think a lot of that was dragged down because he was hurt for the first 2 months and plus of the season, right? So you could see that happening. Relief pitching wise, I don't know. I don't know for sure. We do have a top 5, I think, bullpen in baseball, but I think that's a culmination of the parts. Because, I don't know that I'd put Emilio Pagan on there, but, I could see them maybe sneaking him in there. I could also, if they really did their research, could see Tony Santillan maybe making his way on there. He was that good last year, guys. I'm just being honest with you. I think he could sneak his way on there. It's not just closers. They said relief pitchers. They did just closers and then relief pitchers. I think Tony Santillan would be on without even a question. But I don't know. Do you think Steer or either of those two could make it? I mean, I could see them being real spicy, by the way, and throwing Sal Stewart in there in the top 10 first baseman. I don't think they would, but they could. If they're really trying to be spicy. But I just want to throw that out there. But either of the other 3 that I mentioned, do you feel like could be a possibility?
I don't think they will. I think the Spencer Steer, as we talked about last week, in my opinion, he just doesn't do enough offensively as a first baseman to warrant a lot of consideration for playing first base. To be honest, it's a position where you need offense. And for relief pitching, it's the same thing we talked about with Hunter Green and the Cy Young stuff. There are so many guys in bigger markets who are going to get the credit. And because I would say Pagan was a good closer, not an elite closer, I think they're going to lean towards big market closers with this list. And then also if big market relief pitchers after big market closers. So that kind of limits the spots that are going to be available. I do think that there's a case to be made for Pagan and Santillan. And like you said, it's just there's no... Part of the reason why I like this bullpen is because there's a lot of good relief pitchers. There is no star, and that is something to be honestly, if we get to the trade deadline, it might be hey, we're trading for an elite closing pitcher. Pagan, you're going to slide down to set up. That's a very real possibility with this if we're actually going to go for it. And I think that just because we don't have the star, that's going to leave you out of these top 10 lists. And so there's a lot of relief pitchers in baseball.
There are, no doubt about it. And I agree with you. I don't think it's likely. I was just even looking at the chances for Mr. Steer, and unless if they really do value defense quite a bit, I just don't think he's making it. I mean, Pete Alonso, Nick Kurtz, Michael Busch, Minnie Pasquantino, Spencer Torkelson, Matt Olson, Bryce Harper, Christian Walker, Ben Rice, Freddie Freeman, and Vlad Guerrero, all at first base, all with more home runs than him. Josh Naylor as well. I think he'll get some considerations. Cody Clemens. No, not him. Alec Burleson, maybe. I don't know. Just depends on how much they're valuing the bigger markets. But like I said, I think he could maybe sneak in if they count his defense. But if not, then that's okay. We'll take what we can get. I mean, having 4 players in the top 10 at all, I think for the Reds is definitely a successful setup for this team. Let's briefly touch on Joey Votto. We know where he is going. He will not be a Red. Originally, the question of the day was going to be, do you think that Joey Votto will ever be in the Reds broadcast booth? What I will tell you is this is setting him up to potentially be that in the future. It's really cool to see him, Clayton Kershaw, and Anthony Rizzo are all going to be part of a new squad on NBC. Joe, there are a lot of really, those 3 minds together on one thing. I'm going to have to tune in at some point. I may even watch it consistently because not only do I love Joey Votto, but I think Clayton Kershaw is a genius, and Anthony Rizzo is extremely smart, one of the few Cubs that I always just loved and had respect for. I think that'll be really fun. But I'm just excited for Joey Votto to be able to kind of show himself off on TV more to the rest of the world. I think it'll be a treat for everybody.
Yeah, actually, I don't want Votto in the Reds booth at all. I want him in this national role. I think it's good for the Reds overall to have someone in that spotlight, and I want him addressing like all of baseball. I want to learn more about the game from all teams and not just like Reds focused. I think it's really good to have a hitter as good as him from that role, and I'm really excited to watch Kershaw as well. Rizzo's a big ding dong who always tried to start shit with the Reds, so he can go fuck off. But
Oh
I'm
wow,
just teasing here. He always did. He always did. Like
he did.
there was a lot of stuff he used to start with the Reds, but I will listen to him too. I respect what a good player he was, and I think they got a good crew there. But I think honestly, Kershaw and him talking about pitching is going to be a lot of fun, and Votto's with the hitting. I think it's going to be good. I think Reds fans liked when Pete Rose was on the Fox Sports national broadcast because it was when he talked hitting, it was like he was teaching A-Rod and Frank Thomas about hitting in a way that they hadn't heard before. And although what he did off the field is obviously questionable and all that, he was really good on TV, and I think that's something that Votto can do in an even better way now that he's shown his personality like the back half of his career with the Reds too.
Yeah, I think he's going to shine. I think he's going to be the star of that set if he just allows himself to kind of relax a little bit and do his thing. I get what you're saying. I just hope one day that, when he decides he's done with the national circuit, that he comes back and does a little bit of Reds just because I would love to see him every day. I just would. It would bring me a lot of joy to see him every day. But that continues with our conversation about the TV stuff. The latest that we've gotten on the FanDuel Sports Network. We told you guys we would keep you updated. The exact quote that I found from this article. Unless an 11th hour financing can coerce its 9 MLB teams to stay put, Main Street Sports Group could have little choice but to file for Chapter 7 and immediately liquidate its business next week, sources told SBJ, Sports Business Journal. Now, Joe, what's really interesting about this is there are a lot of teams, including if you're from Cincinnati, the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the Cleveland Cavaliers that are on this, okay? They would literally have to figure something out now. Not, before the season or after, right now, if this were to happen. And we're going to find out this week whether or not that's going to go down. Based on the Reds going out and making the signing that they did, I would assume that there is something in place either for this to be nixed or saved. I don't know which one for sure, but we are 100% getting our answer here in the next 5 days. I am so confused as to how it has gotten to this level, and it is just baffling to me that they are literally in the middle of the season. Like, if you're a fan of a team that is playing basketball or hockey right now, I would be irate. Because there is a chance that you will not be able to watch your teams play for a however indefinite long period of time unless if the NHL or the NBA just swoop in and decide to start paying everybody. I don't know what you do. Like, you can't. We talked about this last week. You cannot come up with enough assets that quickly. It is just impossible. I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah, I think the NBA might give everyone free league pass. They seem to do a good job with public relations a little bit in terms of like the fan interest and stuff. NHL, I don't know what they would do. But also, those people would also have to learn how to get NBA League Pass and all that stuff. So that's not always ideal. There's even a chance if they figure this out short term that they talked about in the article I read that this could go dark mid-season where we're in the middle of May or June and all of a sudden we don't get Reds games, and that's the big fear here. So
Yeah.
I wish these teams would stop, because we already opted out of the contract and we're just kind of considering offers, right? So like, I wish we would just cut ties and just do the MLB Network thing. I know we talked about that the offer is way better from FanDuel Sports Network, but we're in a world where like, in what world would someone not say, "Oh, this guy's gonna give me $1 million, but he has $0 to his name. Okay, I'm gonna go somewhere else where someone has $500 to give me, and they're gonna give me $500." That's just like that guy's. They're never gonna give you the money. There's almost no way I see this going well. So I just don't know when we kind of wise up and say like, "Hey, let's just stay with MLB Network. It's gonna be less money than we were promised by FanDuel, but." What's the percent chance we actually get that money from FanDuel? 10%? Is that generous? Maybe. I don't really know how the business works, so I'm just gonna say 10 cents seems a little bit high for me. So I'm going to say take this for sure money and hopefully get us set up for the full season instead of having fans having to switch from FanDuel midseason to MLB Network or whatever have you. So very confusing, but I would say for Reds fans to expect MLB Network to kind of be the decision, and hopefully we'll have some news for you here in the next little bit.
Yeah, I'm hoping by next week we'll have some news for you. You guys can check on Twitter as well. Joe and I will put something out there if something does come to fruition. I would also expect it to be MLB Network at this point, unless if one of the leagues buys them out or I don't know, something completely unexpected happens. Maybe Fox Sports gets back in, right, and decides that they think that they can make a killing off of the same type of deal that FanDuel Sports Network did. I don't know, but something's gonna have to happen. Because you can't go into baseball season without the TV rights. It's the number one thing. So we expect something will happen. We'll let you know when it does. Now, the Reds did, before they made their big signing, miss out on two guys that we have talked about. One that we knew pretty well in Austin Hayes. He signed a one-year deal, $6 million to the White Sox. And Luis Arias, 1 year, $12 million to the San Francisco Giants. Now, Joe, you knew my feelings on Arias. We'll talk about that in a second. But I want to talk about Hayes. I feel like at this price, the Reds missed out. He's taken a shot, I think, maybe to be the everyday starter. Maybe the Reds were not giving him that opportunity. The White Sox, he will start in Chicago, guaranteed at this point. And good for him for taking another bet on himself. It's a lot cheaper, I believe, than what the Reds were probably going to offer him. Excuse me, a lot more expensive than what the Reds were probably going to offer him. I imagine the Reds offer was somewhere around 1 year, $4 million. That would have made sense to me. But I do think that he really wanted somewhere to start. And so the White Sox offer him probably a little bit more money than he would have gotten here, and he gets to start in left field for them. I wish him nothing but the best, but Joe, I do feel personally like this is a miss from the Reds.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess put it in two perspectives. I do think there's a positive to this. I think it sped up the Suarez stuff because once Hayes was off the market, it's like how many more guys are left? Because, like you said, with the Arias signing this week too, no matter what type of bat you wanted or who was out there, there's way less people out there, and that kind of like puts a little bit more pressure on teams. They're going to start spending their money, especially with pitchers and catchers reporting in 8 days. So I think that's a good value. I think if they didn't sign Suarez, that's a definite must. You have to have him at $6 million, $6.5 million, whatever. Because they did sign Suarez, I do think there is a world where they could have signed Suarez. It would have to be a world where everyone is okay with benching Matt McLain, which the Reds are just so unwilling to do. And that's what it would have taken. It would have been Suarez at DH. It would have been Sal Stewart at second. It would have been Steer at first. And it would have been Austin Hayes in left, which I think is a good lineup and a good strategy. Matt McLain, if you want to cry about it, play better, get better. So
Yep.
I do believe Matt McLain can bounce back, but we also can't have the season we had last year or the year before that, and that's gonna be something to watch out here for the Reds. I do think that they still could have done it, but I think the positive is like I said, it did push forward us going and getting Gino at the time we did because it kind of limited the options we had to have a legit hitter.
Yeah, I completely agree. We'll move on to Arias. Now, Arias gets a 1 year, $12 million deal. And Joe, you and I had a little back and forth on Twitter about this. Now, I do respect and understand that the man had 181 hits last year. Not going to take that away from him whatsoever. He did have 30 doubles. It was a rarity for him, but he had 4 triples. He almost had double-digit home runs as well. And I know the man does not strike out, right, pretty much ever. But I'll give my side real quick to this, and then I would love to hear your response to it. I didn't as much dislike the player as the fit for the Reds, right? It's that I didn't know, because I know he wanted to play second base. That is part of the reason why he took a 1 year deal for the Giants, by the way, is it's straight up because he wanted to play second base. While I know he's a better hitter, it would have made your generally very, very good defense pretty poor at a pretty important position, right? Alongside Ellie, who needs somebody who I think can sometimes make up for some of the small mistakes that he may make, right? And along with that, we needed somebody who could drive in runs. And Luis Arias, whether it's because of where he's batted or any of the other things, is not that. I also didn't love the price, right? While I know he is an outstanding hitter, I felt like 8 to 10 million would have made a little bit more sense to me. I know it's only a $2 million difference, but it just was a little bit of sticker shock for me to see that, especially for a guy who it didn't seem like almost anybody really wanted. To be clear, if he's taking a deal like this, just saying, I don't know. People don't want to play him.
Not true.
No, I'm talking about like to play second base specifically, right? And so with the way that the Reds were doing it, right? My last thing with this is essentially he would have to be your DH. And I just don't love him as a DH on this team. And so I know you feel very differently. It wasn't the right fit for me. Clearly it was not for other teams, as they could not find a way to fit him on their team for second base. He is still an outstanding hitter, a very well-respected hitter. I do 100%, I very much do 100%, respect him as a hitter. But, I don't know. He's coming off of, which is wild, his worst year, which is a 292 batting average. And I don't know. I just couldn't wrap my hand around it. It just didn't feel like the right person to have on this team. So that's what I will say. I don't think he's a bad player at all. I respect the game. But for what this team was specifically looking for, it didn't feel like a fit for me. And I am glad that he is with the Giants. And I'm sure he'll have 220 hits or whatever this year. Make me eat my words. And somehow he'll find a way to hit it over that big frickin' wall in right field more times than I expect. But yeah, I'm happy with the direction that things went, especially now.
Yeah, I don't agree with that whatsoever. I do think there was way more teams who were willing to put him at second base than you are offering. I think he got a very solid deal. I think it's worth the deal. Led the league in hits last year, like you said. Last year was a down year for him, 1.2 WAR. It's not the greatest thing for a $12 million player, but when you consider it's a down year, still has a very good eye at the plate. And I'm not saying that he should have been the move over Eugenio Suarez.
No.
I am saying that he also, if it was hey, so Arias is the only move we make, I'm not happy. But if we were going to give Kyle Schwarber close to $30 million, you could have given Gino 15 and Arias 12. I'd be like, fuck yeah, let's go. Fuck you, Matt McClain. See you later. I don't think the defense matters as much. Like I said, when you're building the roster construction, I think that this would be a good move because our biggest issue outside of power hitting is having consistent offense, having consistent hitters in the 1 and 2 spot. Specifically, Friedel's been fine, but he had that slump in the middle of last year, and that 2 spot was awful. So I'm totally fine with the Giants doing this. I really like what the Giants are doing. Buster Posey knows what he's doing. I really do think that he could have set the table for so much for this Reds offense, and any offense really. I get what they like the advanced analytics. That's fine. I really think that this is an oversight of this is a really, really good hitter. This could have set the table for us. There is a world right now where we have very slumpy hitters. We're going to get to Gino in a second. We have very slumpy hitters. And that's one thing Arias is not always. He's pretty consistent. Yes, there's a lot of times where he'll just pop out because he makes contact, and that's just it. But he puts the ball in play. I always appreciate that. And he can get the pitchers to work a little bit, even though he doesn't take as many walks as you would think he does. So I think that the Reds fans who are so against it, I get it if you're saying, hey, we need power. I'm not saying that we should have just done Luis Arias. I'm saying we should have gotten a power bat and Luis Arias. And I also think that the defense doesn't matter as much. And yes, as of right now, I would rather have him on the field at second base, despite the bad defense, 100 times out of 100 than Matt McClain. Now, Matt McClain can prove me wrong this year. He can bounce back. But he was a 0.0 WAR player last year. after everything, even after he bounced back. So I think the Giants got a good deal. I think the Reds were never going to go more than just one bat. I really don't think that was in the cards for them. I do think it was a perfect fit for this team and how we set up the offense, because there is a real world where I think there's weeks at a time where we are very mad at this Reds offense again because of the type of roster we put out there again. And it's just because of the slumps that we go through. So that was just kind of the thing. I wanted a consistent major league hitter, and whether you like his defense or not, everyone can admit he's a consistent major league hitter, and that he would provide some sort of value to this team. That's the thing, is like we probably spent too much time on a guy that was only hypothetical and probably not going to be on the roster for next year, but that's the thing that really bugs me, is I really do see a hole in this lineup in the 1 and 2 spots. Friedel, like we said, is fine leadoff hitter. Like, it's not the greatest. 2-hole was pretty bad. We're going to have to see, with this lineup, we're still going to have to see guys take lots of jumps in different ways. And some of that's not getting into slumps. Some of that's young guys stepping up. Some of that's Matt McClain coming back from injury. And there's still a lot of variance. And I think it's going to be fine this year. But I do think if they had a consistent major league hitter, despite what the defense says, I think it'd be a lot better. And I would rather have him. I mean, tell me we have everyone we have right now and to have him at second base instead of Matt McClain. I'm very, very excited. But it wasn't in the cards for how the Reds been. That's how it goes.
Yeah, and it's just, for me, like, I don't think you're wrong. And like you said, I think it is worth a conversation. I think if the Reds were going to sign more than one person, I would have been more on board. I was just worried that this would be the only person that they would sign, and that's where, to me, it was like, I mean, like, let's be real here. This guy, despite being on base technically a lot because of hitting specifically, right? He doesn't score a lot of runs. He scored 66 runs for a Padres team last year that did have some boppers behind him, right? Like, he does hit into a lot of unfortunate situations, right? He can't field, but, like, what I will say to you is if the Reds did have an extra $12 million, like, really and truly, he'd be the perfect two-hole hitter, without a doubt, for this team. I do not disagree with you on that. My problem is that we were getting guys on base. Think about how many times we'd have like 10 hits in a game and we'd score 1 run because we couldn't get that extra big hit, right? Those other things. This guy does not do that, right? And he doesn't score technically a lot of runs either. Like, there's a reason why his WAR is as low as it is for a guy who's getting 200 hits a season. He had 200 hits and had a 1 WAR. We value stats here. We've talked about that a lot, right? A 1 WAR for a $12 million guy, technically our second highest paid player on the team. I mean, Matt McClain was horrible last year, and if we're talking stats, he had 1 less WAR than this man. Right? So, like, I'm just saying, like, I see 100% if this guy was the second big hitter signed, I would be all about it. But it just didn't make sense to me. And it's also, shout out to Dylan. You reached out, you said something on Twitter too. You're awesome, man, and I appreciate it, but I just didn't feel like that was the right move for the Reds. If they had gotten him and somebody else, I would have been like, all right, like, that is awesome. That makes this lineup, like, killer along with the pitching. I can sacrifice the defense. But if it was ever going to be Luis Arias and nothing else, I would have been like, oh, great, we're going to have 12 hits and 2 runs a game. Beautiful. Love that. Now it's different, and I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, I think that the problem is with, putting... Okay, so the main problem is we have the money to pay because we were going to sign Kyle Schwarber.
I agree.
I made an offer that was $25 million. So we very much, we could have done $12 million for Arias. We could have done $15 million for Gino. And that really helps this lineup in a way that is very huge. And I get what you're saying about having runners on base, but we did not have a good average last year. Comparatively, we talked about, I think last week, that all the teams in the top 10, basically a lot of them made the playoffs. And batting average, it'd be really cool to have that guy to set the thing. So I really don't necessarily agree with, like, the point where, like, he's not going to be that help gets guys in, because we didn't really have that many guys on base. Yes, there's plenty of times where we have 10 hits and no runs, but in terms of comparing us to other MLB offenses, we could have had such a better average to go get this team set up well, to have runners on base for Ellie, and that was a huge problem. We didn't have, I mean, not that Ellie was going to knock him in anyway with only 18 home runs or whatever last year. What he finished with, but it's just like one of those things where that's where the value comes in. So again, if you're telling me, would I rather have Arias and Hayes and Andujar over just Gino? I think that's a very good debate because, like I said, with the variance of how this lineup sets up now, nonetheless, I mean, I'm very happy with Gino. We're going to get to that in a second here. So I really do think that it's undervalued. I think the average being up would help just about everyone in the lineup. And there's just I get that the WAR stat, he 1.2 WAR higher than Matt McClain, but I do think that there is some added value to having runners on base, and he gets on base. And I think that he would have been very good for this offense. He's a guy that, I just really think he would have been a very good fit after having a power hitter, depending on who that power hitter was. I mean, it really doesn't matter who the power hitter was, but that's something I think that long term for this team, Rob, and then this next offseason, even at the trade deadline, we may be looking for a one or two hitter. Like we I mean, we may
100%. Couldn't agree.
It's just one of
Couldn't
those
agree
things.
more.
One of those things. So it's. I mean, last thought on this, because we've talked about Luis Ariz more than ever. He's never going to be a Red, and that's very sad for me. That's what I'm watching for now. Is like Reds, for better or for worse, whether we think he's the best fit or whatever. The Reds made this choice to go all in on Gino, and to make sure that Matt McClain's a starting second baseman. Now there are things we can do where we move Sal Stewart to second base or something. Better work. I mean, if we're trying to say we're trying to win, it better work. Otherwise, I guess we're just doing what we always try to do, which is make money and sell tickets and make Reds fans miserable. But better work. Otherwise, if you had a guy right there for $12 million, that was, again, Gino and his salary is the same as Kyle Schwarber's. You could add two players for the price of one, or we could have just paid Kyle Schwarber all this money, Rob, and then everyone would be happy. No one would be talking. That's how it goes.
I actually think it turned out pretty well for the Reds. I'm going to be honest. Look, I know that everybody's going to be like, they don't spend. They spent a ton of money on their bullpen. They've got good starting pitching. You needed a guy who can drive in runs. They went and they got a guy who can drive in runs. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, the man had 35 more runs scored, not even just RBIs, than Luis Arias. He had 41 more home runs. He had the same amount of doubles and 50 more RBIs. Now, is he going to strike out a lot? He sure as hell is. But Eugenio Suarez is back for 1 year, $15 million with a mutual option of $16 million. It probably won't happen unless if he just is like, I love being here. The Reds sign him maybe to an extension, right, to keep him around. But we're at least getting Gino Suarez, a guy who we've talked about trading for a few seasons in a row now, Joe, to come back to Cincinnati. It's clear he wanted to, right? And, there's just... This team gets so much better with him there because he is a feared hitter. The Reds have gone out and they have gotten the number 5... This isn't right. Sorry, 1 second. All of Major League. Thank you. Yes, the number 5 home run hitter in baseball. The only people who hit more home runs than Eugenio Suarez are Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, Kyle Schwarber, and Cal Raleigh. Right? I mean, even in RBIs, he's one of the top guys in all of baseball in RBIs. Right? He finished 4th in RBIs. Now, Joe, I'm not talking about Arias anymore, but while we were talking, I was looking at the stats for on base and average for the Reds team. The Reds were actually surprisingly pretty okay at getting on base. They were right near the middle of the pack already. Right? And if you expect them to, all their players to get even just a little bit better, right? You have a Sal Stewart in there. You hopefully have a healthy Spencer Steer and Matt McClain. Right? You got 2 guys in left field who are going to be better than the backup options that they did have. Right? And I do think that this probably kicks Spencer Steer out potentially into left field. We'll see. We're going to talk about that. I still don't know what the hell they're going to do in left field, if I'm being completely honest with you. I do not know. That's a conversation for a different day. But the Reds needed a 4-hitter, or at least a 3-hitter if they even end up moving Ellie up to the 2-hole, right? This gives you a guy who they cannot pitch around Ellie De La Cruz to get to a Eugenio Suarez. They just can't, because at any point, a Eugenio Suarez is going to launch a bomb, right? I mean, I don't know what else to say, but I love it. They needed that type of guy, and yes, Schwarber would have been better. There's no doubt about it. But, I mean, Suarez, he just hits home runs, and he does a freaking really good job at it. And I'm just really excited to see him back here. I will remind you guys, he and Ellie De La Cruz are going to strike out quite a bit. Okay? They're going to strike out nearly 400 times combined, which is going to be very frustrating. But at the same time, they are going to be putting up a lot more runs because Eugenio Suarez is going to be there, and I bet Ellie will probably strike out even less because he's finally going to have a guy that they cannot pitch around him. There's nobody else on this team that is a better hitter than Eugenio Suarez other than a healthy Ellie De La Cruz, and that is so exciting. I think Reds fans should be ecstatic that they went out and actually got a guy. I wish they would have just signed him to like a 3-year deal. Honestly, Joe, that's the only complaint I have. Bump it up just a little bit. Take the risk. But I don't know. I love it. I think it's a great signing. I'm very excited for it. I'm glad at least that there's a mutual option there should things go well enough that he decides he wants to come back for another season.
Yeah, I'm just going to run down all the notes I had on it. First time we'll ever have a real DH as the Reds team.
Correct.
Since we really haven't filled that spot. They pretty much said he's going to play DH because obviously Brian Hayes III. And in Jeff Passan's article at ESPN, Sal Stewart looks like he's going to be the first baseman, which, like you said, Spencer Steer is going out to left. I think that is a very fine move for everyone moving forward. You could make the case Spencer Steer at first, move Sal Stewart to second, go sign a left fielder would be a move.
Matt McLean
but this is
left field? Sorry.
Or you can do that. Yeah, whatever. I think Spencer Steer is fine on left. He's already played it, so that's fine. This is so the first DH. The club option he mentions in the article probably won't be picked up because he's either going to play well and then he's going to want to go on the market again, or he's not going to play well. We're not going to give $60 million because we are the Reds and we don't do that. So
correct.
The defensive positioning is going to be fine. I do still like the defense with this move. Suarez obviously DHing. It's going to be fun to watch the lineup and see how it does. Like you said, or like I said earlier, the variance in terms of where it's going to be strikeout from Ellie and Suarez is really going to kill some things. That's going to be frustrating to deal with. But the upside is great. If he played his home games in Great American Ballpark last year, he would have hit 54 home runs for the season. Buddy. So have to keep in mind that he was playing in the last several years since leaving Cincinnati. He was playing in Seattle and Arizona, which are two of the home run, no one hits home runs in those ballparks. So he comes back here, and I'm excited to see what he does. He's a different player than he was when he left, and we're just hoping that the last time he hit 49 home runs was when he was a Red, and the next season didn't go so well when he was on the Reds, and then we had the salary dump from the season after that. So we're just hoping that he keeps these stats up. There is some to be concerned about. He slumped down the stretch after getting traded back to Seattle. He batted 189, 13 home runs, though, in 53 games. So the low batting average there.
He was injured.
13 home runs. He was injured, but 13 home runs in 53 games isn't that bad, too, for a power hitter. It's not the greatest thing either, but it's pretty good. And, I think with him, too, in the last several years, he's moved around the lineup. That's something we might have to get used to, too, is yes, I think ideally he is the 4-hitter behind Ellie for most of the season, but there's definitely a place where if he's slumping, you move him down on the lineup, or you move him up in the lineup to try to get something going. I don't know if that's going to help or hurt his confidence or what, because it's definitely played a factor in both of his stops before this. But that's something to watch out for, is he could slump, he could move up and down the order. Ideally, he plays well all season long, stays in that 4-hole. We find someone to fill the 2-hole, and then we have a really good 1 through 5.
Yeah, I'm putting together a lineup as we speak right now. And I don't think it's a bad one. whatsoever. I'm finishing this up now because, again, this came late in the evening here. But let me see here. 1, 2. Oh, yeah, I'm forgetting Mr. Stevenson here. But what I will say is this team randomly becomes very, very righty heavy. That is one thing you will have to keep in mind. But here is what I would project the opening day lineup to look like just real quick. TJ Friedel in center, Spencer Steer in left, Ellie De La Cruz at shortstop, Eugenio Suarez at DH, Noelvi Marte in right field, Sal Stewart at first, Matt McLean at second, Stevenson at catcher, and Brian Hayes batting there at third base. That's a good lineup. When Tyler Stevenson and Matt McLean are at the bottom of your lineup, you're happy about that. Okay, because Stevenson still can hit. He's still a pretty solid hitter when he is healthy, especially. And I'm a big believer that Matt McLean is going to come back and be better than last year. I don't know how much better. I don't think we're going to see the, almost 300 hitter, McLean that we had all kind of hoped he might be. But I think he's going to bat like 260. And I think you'll take that out of your 7-hole hitter. Right? I mean, there's a world where Sal Stewart moves right on up the lineup. Right? There's a world where Noelvi Marte is one of the best 5 hitters in baseball and is a really solid right fielder. Like, there are plenty of options. And then you got guys on the bench, right, in, J.J. Bleday or Will Benson if they decide to keep him, right? There are options for you that can bat left-handed if you need them. So, Joe, I'm ecstatic, man. I really am. I love Suarez. I know that he has slumps. There's no doubt about it. But he's still a really solid baseball player. I mean, he is a guy who has, I think, only gotten better with age. He had a down year batting average-wise, but the year before, he was 256 in that Arizona lineup. That went all the way to the World Series, right? I think he's a more mature hitter. I think with some good lineups around him and a little bit more certainty, right? I think he can be a really solid player here for Cincinnati. And like you said, I mean, his average and stuff dropped when he went to Seattle, a team that could not really hit at all and in a ballpark that was not conducive to hitting. I don't know. Seattle were some of his worst years batting average-wise other than the 2020 season and the season that we shipped him off, like you said. But then when he went to Arizona, he was like a 250 hitter. So, when he was here in Cincinnati, 280, 248, 260, 283, 271. He had 5 years of over 250 batting average. And he's a more mature and I think a better hitter than he was then. And he doesn't have Joey Votto next to him, right, which I'm sure helped. But Ellie De La Cruz is going to be fine, and I think whoever they stick, at that 5-hole behind him is going to be really nice too. I don't care if it's, Marte, Stewart, if McLean really shows that he can do something and moves up to the 2-hole and it ends up being Steer. I don't really care. What I do know is Joe, when I look at this lineup, I think Steer's going to hit 20 more home runs. Ellie De La Cruz is going to hit 20 or more home runs. And Eugenio Suarez is going to hit 20 or more home runs. Noelvi Marte, I think, in a full year. Healthy, no PEDs, 20 or more home runs. I think Sal Stewart is going to hit more than 20 home runs. And I think Tyler Stevenson or McLean, not both, but one of them, could as well. And if you're going to tell me that 6 guys on the Reds could hit 20 or more home runs, I think this team might be pretty good now. I think that they can make a run. Just getting Suarez does that much for this team, Joe. With the pitching that they have, it might be enough to kind of get them through those slumps. I'm ecstatic, man. They needed a big hitter so badly. And I know I'm going to be bitching and moaning about him when he's striking out. But, it's just enough for them to, I think, be seriously competitive.
Yeah, no, I think they're going to be competitive. I think they have a playoff roster.
Yep.
They I think can win a series, and then you get to the tough teams, and that will still be tough. I do think they have a better chance than they did last year
I agree.
when they play the Dodgers, but it's still the Dodgers. So if you're asking me, are they going to win the World Series? I'd probably say no, just because the Dodgers are so overstacked, and they still
Yes.
have other teams like the Cubs have had a pretty good offseason in different ways. This is still tough, but I think it's better than last year. I think they can do better than last year. Honestly, like I'm giving the offseason for the Reds like a B plus. I still think that there was room to do more, whether that was the Schwarber thing, whether that was going like now that you have Suarez, do you go get another piece, another bat to throw with this lineup? I do think it's a pretty good lineup, but the end does tail off a little bit with Key Brian Hayes and Matt McClain, and Stevenson will be fine, I think. But I think the one gripe I have is now I like all the guys here. I do think Matt McClain is going to bounce back. I also think this team would have benefited from getting someone, a mid-tier free agent, a low-tiered free agent, to compete with Matt McClain for his spot and to try to get the best out of him. And if he doesn't work out, we have an insurance plan. And I also think it would have been good for the defense, too, because right now we don't have a backup middle infielder. I mean, Sal Stewart's going to play second a little bit, so that is like a weakness. If we brought in like a veteran second baseman, shortstop, that could be someone who could start every day at second base if Matt McClain doesn't work out. I do think that is worth doing because we talk about that defense. You move Sal Stewart from first to second, that's not as good as having Matt McClain and Ellie and everyone there. So that's the one thing I want to see them add before the season starts now. I think the roster is pretty much set, but I do want them to add a veteran middle infielder so we don't have to, if Matt McClain gets hurt or if Ellie gets hurt and then Matt McClain moves to shortstop and Sal Stewart moves to second base and then Gino moves to first, and that hurts your offense. So have a different way, having one more utility guy who can play the infield just in case of emergency, and if he's good enough that he can push Matt McClain just a little bit. I think that's the best thing for Matt McClain too, where he has that little bit of competition, but he's not totally fearful for his job, just a little bit. I think that's going to get the best out of this lineup, best out of Matt McClain too, and I think this lineup is with that one extra piece where break in case of emergency type of guy. I think this lineup is very, very probably underrated nationally, and if Ellie is healthy the second half of the season, like he was in the second half of the season, I think this is very dangerous team because of the pitching and because of everything else. That's the one, like I said, the one gripe I have is just that. It's that one utility guy I can have for the middle of the field.
I think that there are two people specifically that the Reds could go get to do this. I think one would even end up being there in the potentially in AAA. I think your boy Santiago Espinal. Funny enough, I think he likes being a Red, and I think if somewhere else does not happen for him, I could totally see him finding his way to a minor league deal with an invitation to camp. That would not surprise me. There are some guys as well that are still available who I don't think would be too bad here. I don't think they'd cost too much either. But, funny enough, Kyle Farmer is still out there and doing it. He can absolutely get it done up the middle if you absolutely need him to. If they decided they wanted to spend a little more, and this guy was fine being on the bench, even though he's not a great hitter, but is very solid defensively, is Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is still out there, and I think could be a guy who might take a short-term, just some kind of deal to be on a decent team. There are guys out there, I think, that can fill that role. The last one I'll put out there to you is Edwin Arroyo. I'm just saying he's still, I think, a pretty underrated prospect. He's just been hurt and is kind of climbing his way back and kind of got buried, right? I think he's a much better player than people think. So he could also be somebody who you will have to watch for. But, yeah, I will say I'm going to give this offseason a B+ as well. I do think if they had just spent the money to get Schwarber, it would have been an A for me. I think if they go out and they get either another left fielder or, like you said, a middle of the infield kind of guy, I would be fine with that as well. But they're very close to an A. I mean, this is what you needed. I think the Suarez signing, I give an A-. I think the only reason I don't give it an A is if I think it should have been a 2-year deal. I would have loved to have seen a 2-year deal for him. I really would have, but I think he wants to see if he can get to play third base again somewhere. But I think those days may be over for him. Honestly, I think people are going to be fine with him just having his bat and doing his thing. So, yeah, I just, dude, the vibes are going to be so good. He's a leader, too. This team needed a leader. Suarez is a leader, and he brings those vibes with him everywhere he goes. Like, damn, dude. Like, he just, it's chef's kiss. You miss out on Schwarber. Feels like Schwarber kind of used the Reds to get a better deal. That is what it is. But you know that Eugenio Suarez is going to walk in on day one and he is going to light up that clubhouse. He's going to be like, hey, guys, most of you weren't here when I was here last time, but do you remember me? You know? He's going to go up to Jim Day, give him the biggest freaking hug. Like, I bet that press conference, when he sits down and puts a number 7, I wonder, we're going to have to see about that with Spencer Steer, by the way, but potentially a number 7 Eugenio Suarez Reds jersey back on. Like, that's not, like, you don't, it's just good vibes only, man. Good vibes only. I just can't wait to have him back here. I was smiling ear to ear. I was at dinner with my in-laws, Joe, and I got the news, and I gave my brother-in-law a high five. I was like, dude, can you freaking believe the Reds went out and got Suarez? Like, just, I'm a happy man, Joe. I don't know what else to say. I'm a happy man right now.
Yeah, and I think we all should be. I feel like your point about the locker room guy. I think a lot of times this team gets a little bit tight, and having someone who can loosen things up, like, hey, Matt McClain, you have a stick up your butt right now. Let's make sure let's loosen up a little bit. Let's have some fun with the Jim Day stuff. Will be good.
Yep.
Again, it's a good signing. I think there, like you said earlier, Rob, there are guys they can sign for that role. I'm not even vouching for my guy Santiago Espinal. You could get someone like Jose Iglesias, who had a down year last year, but before that has been pretty solid ever since he left the Reds. Just anyone who can kind of be that guy to give depth, maybe some veteran leadership along with Gino, maybe a guy like I said who can push McClain. But I do think that there's some versatility with this team that could be nice, right? So if Brian Hayes goes down, Suarez just slides into third, right? If Ellie goes down, McClain goes over to short, or whoever we sign in his place goes over to short. I do really like that aspect of this team. Sal Stewart can move over to second if we need to.
Yep.
I'm hoping there can be. I'm hoping there can be some spots that we can move things around if need be too. Whether there are some guys like, I really like Hector Rodriguez. I think he deserves a spot on this team. Probably. We'll see how spring training goes. I don't know if he's going to get it because there's some guys we signed, but guys like Hector Rodriguez could have a big, Sal Stewart type minor league year in AAA and they come on up.
Yep.
Can we move guys around then? Can we move Spencer Steer to first or to second or so? I don't know, whatever. There's room for growth for some of these guys. And even if we sign that second baseman shortstop, there's going to be room for growth where we can bring these guys up and move things around. I think that the versatility, ability to move positions, but also right now, I think everyone going into spring training knows what position to work on, which is a key too. I think sometimes our defense took a hit.
Yep.
Marte made some nice plays in the right field last year, but he also made some blunders. Gavin Lux never knew where the hell he was playing. It's hard to blame him. I mean, he wasn't very good defensively, but I had really bad plays in the outfield sometimes. But I think that is going to be key too. Everyone right now knows where they're lining up. It could change. I like the versatility to be able to change, but having that, and I think with my point with that, Rob, is we saw how good of a player Suarez was with us the first time around. And then he moved to shortstop. And I think that did play a factor in him having a downward turn, where it's like not only
I forgot about
was
that.
he trying to change his swing. Yeah, not only was he trying to change his swing to be more of a power hitter, which again could be debated because he had such bad years with us. It ended up working out once he left us. So hopefully he comes back and everything's fine. But you also had the pressures of being at the most important defensive position in baseball, where we just saw Ellie De La Cruz get, shit on all last year for all the years he made, and we'll see how the future goes for him. Now that he doesn't have that issue of worrying about moving positions to a position that I don't think really suited him, to be honest, at shortstop, I think this could be really good for him as well. And like I said, I use that point to make a larger point that everyone knows their position going in. And that means that the offense might be better for everyone, as opposed to Marte worrying about moving to right field midseason, or Suarez worrying about playing shortstop, or, whatever have you. All these guys, Sal Stewart knows he's playing first base now. It seems like that's what Passan is saying, or Passan is saying. So that could be a big factor too, is just knowing exactly what your role is going to be.
Nah, I genuinely could not agree more. And I think that having solidified positions, knowing what your job is going in, allows you to focus on that intently and will, I mean, just really give this Reds team a really fun vibe, man. I mean, they have a very unique opportunity, I think, to go out in a division that still feels like it's up for grabs. I know the Cubs have made some decent moves, but realistically, Bregman kind of just replaces Tucker, and they got a little bit better at starting pitching, but I would take our starting pitchers over theirs all day, every day, and I think probably even our bullpen. So I know they may end up hitting a little bit more than us, but I don't know. I'm sitting here, and for the first time in a year, maybe, Joe, I just feel like this is a very complete team. It feels, like you said, very complete. I mean, even Dane Myers being your fifth outfielder feels really good. JJ Bleday being your fourth outfielder to give Spencer Steer a spell here and there feels great. You could throw him in there against righties. If Sal Stewart, can't hit righties as well to start, you move Steer to first base and you put JJ Bleday out there, and shit, I'm fine with JJ Bleday getting some starts every so often now because they got other stuff finally. And so, yeah, I feel like I could talk. I feel like I could glaze this whole situation, Eugenio Suarez all day long. But it gets me excited. I look at this division and I think the Cardinals aren't very good. We're still, I think, a much better team than the Pirates. Congrats on them for getting a couple better bats. The rest of your lineup still sucks. You guys were starting Jack Sawinski, who was batting like 125 for half the season. Like, can you imagine if that was here in Cincinnati and you were starting him? I mean, people are crucifying Matt McClain for batting 230, for a spell there. Like, if you had a guy who was batting half of that, ugh. So, I mean, Milwaukee is arguably worse. They just had to trade away their freaking Cy Young potential pitcher. Like, it feels like it's us and the Cubs, and I will take pitching every day over those bats. And I think we even showed it near the end of the year last year too. Like, I fully believe, and I think I said it on this podcast, if the Reds had played anybody other than the Dodgers, I think the Reds would have absolutely gone to Wrigley and taken care of business. I really do feel that very strongly, and I feel that this way, feel that way this year too, Joe. I really do. And I know, again, I'm riding the high of the Suarez signing, but like, it does feel like there was this missing piece. The Reds have filled it for this season, and we're just going to need to ride with it. And I mean, if you're going to tell me the lineup now does not look better than it did last year, I think you're out of your mind. You get a full year of Stewart. You get Marte in right field. You get Suarez. According to my lineup right now, that's your 4, 5, and 6 hitters right there who are all going to do damage this season. And if you don't think that Suarez, by the way, is not going to be able to help somebody like Sal Stewart, who I think actually has a pretty similar swing to him, by the way, just saying. Just saying.
Yeah, I think our complaints are more minor than most years. So like you said, more complete roster. If our complaints are, hey, we could use one more bat, or hey, we could use a utility infielder just in case, maybe to push Matt McClain, or, hey, our third catcher kind of stinks. That's not too bad for a small market team.
No.
Now, I will say what we have to do is, if we have a team that's ready to compete, we have to be aggressive. We have to go make these trades. Like we did with Andujar last year. Andujar was such a big piece down the stretch. Go trade Edwin Arroyo. Go trade some of those mid-tier prospects and go for it. Because, baseball's a little different than like football. Like football, you never know if you're getting back. Baseball, there is some of that. Like you never know if you're going to get back. But if you have a chance, if it's like the Dodgers and maybe one or two other teams and us, and we're going to go for it, just go for it. Make that trade. Get that star closer we need at the end of that bullpen to make this a truly elite bullpen. Go get that extra bat. We'll shuffle the lineup around a little bit. We'll take Matt McClain out. We'll take TJ Friedl if he's playing bad. Whoever it is, we'll figure it out. This front office has done a good job not a great job, but a good job of setting this team up for this season. And they're just like one or two things away from really pushing it over the edge. And all I'll say is, if we get to that point and they do not make a trade, I'll be very mad. Go make that trade. Don't be afraid to take a shot here. There's always a chance that this year could be a year where we end up competing with the Dodgers. Dodgers have issues, whatever it is. Never take for granted if we have a roster that does get us to the trade deadline where we have a chance. Never take that for granted. Go try to win it. I think pitching can do better, and I do think that there's a chance that, crazy things can happen in this sport, and we just can't be afraid to go seize the moment if it comes to us. Now, if it doesn't, there's different talks, but I just want our front office to be open to doing that, and our ownership group to be open to paying more players if we go make those trades. So that's all I'll say, is we're set up pretty well for a start to the season. The slumps scare me. Some of the other minor things scare me, but this is pretty solid feeling to start the season, and all we have to do is just be aggressive at the trade deadline, and I think we'll be very fine.
I have 3 points. They're all very quick, but they're the last things I'll say about this, and then we'll head it out because it's been a long episode. First point is, the Reds were looking for somebody who will sell jerseys. I said it last week. I'll say it again. Eugenio Suarez coming back. He's going to sell jerseys. They will make a lot more money off of jersey sales because they brought this man back here. Perfect timing. Love that. Secondly, doesn't it feel nice, Joe, to now know that our highest paid player is somebody who probably should be our highest paid player? That there's just something about it, and it's nothing against Brady Singer. I really mean that, because he is very good at what he does, but like seeing Eugenio Suarez at the top of the highest paid player on the Reds feels a lot better to me than seeing Emilio Pagan and Brady Singer. It just does. I don't know how else to put it. It just does for me. The last thing I will say is, man, this team has an opportunity with Tito at the freaking helm, man. I don't think this team, with David Bell or Freddie or whoever, right, it doesn't excite me as much. I worry about it. This team with Eugenio, dude, we get Tito Francona with Eugenio Suarez on the same team for a full year in Cincinnati. I just think the vibes really are going to be immaculate, and that's just another part of all of this, even outside of the statistics, that get me very excited for Cincinnati Reds baseball. But Joe, we have gabbed long enough. We'll probably gab more this week because I think we're both very excited about this off air. What are you feeling? Give us some wise words or some fun facts before we head out.
Well, first of all, I'll apologize if anyone heard Rondo eating the last couple minutes.
I have not heard anything.
And also shaking his collar. He's excited about the move as well. Big Reds fan here. Need to take him to a park in the park at some point. Fun fact. A couple weeks ago, missed it. Bubba Thompson, our former Reds legend a couple years ago, we talked about how he played college football at South Alabama. He's going to try to play quarterback after playing in the major leagues. He is transferred to D2 West Florida. Now, maybe gets a chance to play a little bit, so we'll keep tabs on that as maybe some of the fun facts go around.
Absolutely.
I believe West Florida was the school that Austin Reed went to, and I know a lot of baseball fans may not know that. He ended up transferring to Western Kentucky, and I believe was signed by the Bears. So, maybe there's a path for Bubba Thompson to get to the NFL. I really doubt it, but it's just a fun little story there.
We'll take that. Congrats to you, Bubba Thompson. We hope you're out there enjoying your life. Eugenio Suarez, from the bottom of my heart, I am so glad that you are back. You have been missed, and it's going to be fun to see you in a Cincinnati Reds jersey once more. But Joe, that's going to wrap it up for arguably, I think, our longest episode that we've ever had, and I think rightfully so. A lot of things going on, a lot of conversation needed to be had about a very good move that the Reds have made. But that's going to do it for us, guys. So, from our house to yours, thanks for watching, and we will catch you on the next one.